Welcome back to the Engage Podcast. Ryan Argenta here, your host. Today I'm here with Captain Eric Criswell. He's the MEC chairman. You've heard him before. Eric, welcome back. Thanks for being here. And really, this is a chairman's update, but a little bit of back and forth on what's been going on since the last time we spoke. It was just after the MEC meeting in June. What are some of the unresolved items from the June meeting that have now progressed?
Hey, Ryan. Yeah, thanks for having me back. We finished up the June meeting with kind of a number of items on our plate. A lot of discussion at that meeting over the various state sick benefits that Delta has taken differing positions on. Happy to report in the last couple of weeks, we've had some victories there in Minnesota. The company has completely reversed course. Initially, they were honoring the state sick law as written. Earlier this year, they came out with a position that they decided, while there was ongoing litigation, they were not going to honor it, which was a strange tack to take. Now, recently, they have reversed course again and said, yeah, we'll honor the law. And of course, the ongoing litigation is still in place. We'll take the win, and pilots in Minnesota have access to their state sick. So we're pleased with that. The other recent information that we just got this week is that we filed a request under our contract, Section 13H8, which if there's ever a dispute on the applicability of state sick laws, we will go with the company to the state regulatory authority to seek a determination on who's got the proper interpretation of the law. In Michigan, there's a new state sick law that was passed earlier this year that talks about these benefits are immediately applicable unless you're under a collective bargaining agreement, and they will be applicable as soon as your collective bargaining agreement expires. So that is somewhat ambiguous language in that under the Railway Labor Act, none of our agreements expire. They are amendable. So there was some ambiguity on the application of that state sick in Michigan. So we sent a letter. We just found out this week that Michigan came back with a ruling that what they meant by expiration was actually expiration or amendable. They definitely affirmed that we are entitled to this benefit. They also affirmed that it happens at our amendable date, not at some future date. If we end up in extended contract talks again, there's some concern that they were going to hold off on this benefit until we have a new contract. That's not the case. It's going to happen at the amendable date of this contract, which is, of course, December 31st of 2026. So kudos to our government affairs and our local representatives in both Minnesota, Council 1, and Detroit, Council 20. They've been absolutely instrumental in getting the ball moved forward on these state sick issues, local levels. And it does affect every pilot because these sorts of laws are spreading. They're coming to other states. Most of these states we have bases in that we expect this fight will continue.
Okay. Thing that's come up or surprised you, we'll talk about IROPs and some of the contract violations and things, but what else is on your plate?
So next on our plate, obviously it's been a rough summer. There's been a number of IROPs. I think the company said in June there was something like 21 IROP days. I don't know if every day is an IROP, then I guess no days an IROP. I don't understand how we can say 21 days we've got IROPs, but that's how they're choosing to characterize their operation. Obviously, we had the thunderstorm event. It was the
15th largest thunderstorm in Atlanta's history, right?
We only give out 14 prizes, so it just came under the wire. Yeah, 15th largest. There's no doubt that the company has a lot of very, very dedicated employees working in every single capacity to try to get the ship back upright when when we have an issue. And we get a lot of good service from Delta employees all the way through the gamut. But these events definitely highlight some shortcomings. And anybody that was flying that day certainly felt that. And we have heard uncountable number of anecdotal stories from that day that kind of raise everyone's eyebrows.
Yeah, and it seems that when an IROP takes place, our contract kind of goes out the window, and it's pick up the pieces after, deal with pay issues or contractual things after the fact. It's kind of like file the grievance and we'll deal with it later. Are these operational breakdowns, or does this reflect something more structural in the company's approach?
Look, I think there's a lot of pressure put on, not just the pilots and on all the employees at Delta to perform at a high level. And, when Mother Nature doesn't cooperate, when, people's personal lives don't cooperate, when our equipment doesn't cooperate, I think there's just a lot of pressure on individuals to try to bridge that gap and pick up the ball and run with it, at any cost. And, frankly, I think we are best served to remember that we're all playing on the same team here, and that safety is our number one priority. We've got a lot of people depending on us to do our job the way that we know how to do it, and we shouldn't ever allow ourselves to be talked out of what our instincts tell us are the right thing.
Okay. You sent out a joint letter with PAFCA, which is our dispatchers union, and that unity letter really made some waves. What prompted it, and what does it signal about where we are now?
Well, the IROP, obviously, we just talked about, put a lot of pressure on our pilots. It also put pressure on our dispatchers. We, again, saw a number of situations that got a lot of people's attention. And I personally talked to some leadership. Of course, they're the only other unionized group at Delta. Our dispatchers are about 550 represented by PAFCA. And so I talked to their leadership that weekend to try to figure out, some of these situations that manifested over the weekend, how we could work together to support each other. And really the idea that COM came out of that conversation. Just we're all on the same team here, and we get put in situations where there's sometimes not great answers, and we just have to step back for a moment and say, look, we're going to do the best we can. We are being pressured to try to push the envelope on them. So that's really was the point of that COM, just to remind each other, not just to the pilots, not just to the dispatchers, just to all employees, that we got to have each other's back. Mentioned the flight attendants specifically. Of course, they don't have a union. I have no leadership that I can talk to on their behalf, but kind of a nod to them that, look, we have their back too. We're all on that airplane together. We're all doing that flight as a team, and we are best served to keep in mind the impacts that these situations put on all of us, as humans, not just as Delta employees.
Yeah, I think we all feel the pressures, especially in the summertime and the high ops tempo. I think we feel that as employees across the board. And so, what I'm hearing from you is, as pilots, just remember that, right? We're all human. We're all working together. Yeah, PAFC and ALPA, the dispatchers and the pilots are unionized, and we're in unity with them, but also the flight attendants, even though they're unrepresented. We've got to remember that. So,
yeah, and you hit on the contract piece too. I mean, we have a contract. It was written for all 365 days of the year, not just the ones that have blue skies, and we're going to defend it that way. There is no excuse for brazen instances where the contract just gets thrown out the window. It does feel, I think you alluded to this earlier, Ryan, it does feel like maybe there's been a shift in mindset across the street in that, hey, look, we'll just move airplanes and pick up the pieces later. That doesn't work for us. Just flat out, that does not work for us. We've spent a lot of the last 3 or 4 months putting out some communications to the pilot group on MEC alert form that talk about the various ways that we feel our contract is being abrogated. I know a lot of people are kind of tired of hearing us talk about it. They want to see us do something. So that's you're going to be seeing a lot more about what we are doing about it coming very soon.
Yeah. Is there a sense that the company is deliberately violating or sidestepping the contract as part of its business model? Like, is this just the way it's going to be now?
I get a lot of feedback to that effect. We have darts come in every day. I mean, not even exaggerating, hundreds of darts. You've seen them, Ryan, coming in with these anecdotes. And, when you start to see a pattern of things you haven't seen before, it's hard not to come to that conclusion that, we have a contract that has certain requirements. And if you fast forward to the ending, of course, you can maybe get a plane off the gate, maybe just a little sooner, but we have a procedure to follow, just like in the airplane. If I skip checklists, I can get it off the ground quicker too. But that's just not how we operate. That's not how we've agreed. Delta has signed a contract with us. They're required under the Railway Labor Act to make and maintain agreements in good faith. And just unilaterally deciding, look, it's not convenient today, so we're just going to skip the steps of coverage and not give proper notification, or we're going to call people from our personal cell phones, which violates our requirement to record correspondence, or any number of these practices that we've seen recently. It's not going to work for us. We're keeping track of it. We've got a lot more tools at our discretion today than we've ever had. We have an incredible team of volunteers in our scheduling and our contract administration committees who are on top of this. And, it takes a while to build a case. That's exactly what we've been working on.
Yeah. You talked about good faith and we talked about the goodwill of the pilots and all employees. And so what would good faith look like right now from the company? And are we seeing that?
It's a great question, Ryan. We've got a number of grievances in the queue, but also grievances that have been heard in various venues, whether it's just a regular settlement between us and the company saying, hey, we're going to do something to mitigate that in the future, or whether it be in mediation, which is supervised by the NMB, or whether it be in a full, grievance process. We have a number of agreements right now with the company that we feel they are not honoring. And that's not just a simple violation. That is, there was a violation. We got together, we talked it through, both parties in good faith, talked it through, said, here's how we could manage this going forward. This is what would work for both sides to protect all of our interests and to move forward with a plan to not have this happen again. And in the case of the 23M7 settlement agreement, there is a provision with prior consent that the company can assign trips using that language outside of 8 hours. That was done because on a case-by-case, there may be a reason that is actually a more pilot protective action. There's numerous places in the contract where it requires a conversation to be had with ALPA and prior consent. We were not given the courtesy of that phone call or that conversation during our thunderstorm IROP. Therefore, it's just a blatant violation. They assigned the trips outside 8 hours, but it's rarely the crime itself. It's always the cover-up. People have kids will identify with this, but I've got a little girl, and if she's tugging on my arm asking for chocolate, sometimes the answer is no, sometimes it's yes. But if I see the wrappers in the garbage can without asking, then it becomes a much bigger deal. And that's kind of what we see here. It's not that the answer was going to be yes or that it was going to be no. We weren't even given the courtesy. And the agreement requires us to be involved.
And so you're finding the candy wrappers in the trash can?
Many candy wrappers. We got a couple trash bags full of them after that IROP. 23L4, Note 4 is another one that we talk about a lot. But it's something that was really important to us in negotiations. I was on the negotiating committee when we negotiated that provision. And all it says is when you're out flying a trip and you get rerouted, what happens to the legs that you're no longer going to do from that trip? We care about that. It used to be they'd go into a reroute queue and then just get spread out to a bunch of other reroutes. And your reroute would end up causing 8 other reroutes and seniority is abrogated. So in the last contract, it was important to us that, look, let's have some order to this process. Let's take those legs, let's put them in open time, and let's run them through trip coverage. So the right pilot gets them. The pilot that wants them gets them. The pilot that doesn't want them gets left alone. That was a very important item in the last negotiation. So fast forward to now, that's obviously a process that is ripe for human error. So the company was not necessarily following those steps in the right order, doing it the right way. And so we grieved it and came to an agreement that, look, to fix this going forward, we have to see some automation. Well, we have been given a tour of the automation. It is not even remotely close to what we would consider to be automated. There's still numerous manual steps in that process, and they still mess it up. This is not something that will bring the operation to its knees. We're talking about legs that come off of your original rotation, put them into a new rotation, throw them in open time, and cover them. This isn't a huge ask. And getting the automation right for it, I'm certain is probably challenging, but it's not something that takes the operation to its knees. So it's a solvable problem. And for whatever reason, we're just not able to get traction on it. And they're in violation of this every day. So there's another grievance coming on that. And it's unfortunate because it's not like we're asking them to write $1 billion check. We're talking about the legs that come off a rotation going into open time. It's really a pretty easy thing for them to fix. And here we are going through the grievance process a second time on it.
Yeah, and I'll be blunt because a lot of times we hear the words from the union and the union, calls these things out and they say these are happening and we're frustrated and we bang our fists on the desk. But what tools, what actions does ALPA have at its disposal to really respond to and evoke action from the company on these contract violations?
Well, a centerpiece that is tried and true and used many, many times in history is pilot unity. We have, an informed pilot group. When the pilot group is informed and understands the issues, they not only can respond properly to situations where the company is asking them to violate our agreement, they also can provide leverage in that, look, we're not going to be out here violating the agreement. We stand behind our union. We have unity. We support our reps. We support our MEC members. We support our committee members. And we're not going to allow our contract to be, used as a doormat or ripped up just because, the 17th largest thunderstorm happens to hit Marietta. So unity is an incredibly important piece of this. Now, actual tools to use, the Railway Labor Act, it gives us the grievance process. There's a few iterations of that. Obviously, these settlement agreements, they're not working. We've tried the mediation route. We did that for about a year. There was a lot of excitement about that path because it felt like, we're really going to get our issues heard. We're going to be methodical and thorough with these settlement agreements. That's what we've done, and that's not working either. We were hopeful as good faith partners with that process, but until we resolve some of these other issues, we are not going to participate in a waste of time. Beyond that, the Railway Labor Act requires a number of things at both parties. And there are legal mechanisms. Believe me, we're engaged with our internal attorneys, and we are going down a road in which we believe there will be some accountability for Delta in the legal realm under the Railway Labor Act. You'll definitely hear more about it, but there are legal means for us rather than just our own internal accountability measures.
Yeah, when you're having to file grievances on grievance settlements and, you have enforcement issues, then that really does lose, good faith and the goodwill. So it's good to know that we have the tools.
It shows a pattern. The pattern is really what is important. And much of this is pretty black and white. There isn't a lot of gray area in the areas where we are saying there's repeated violations. And that's the key is it's not really up for dispute what automation means in some of these cases. It's not up for dispute because trips are covered outside of a time frame. It's not up for dispute that you can't swipe on your MyCrew app and have your sick time counted properly. Those things are evidenced just by any layman that picks up those situations and looks at them. So again, it shows a pattern, and that's the important piece under the RLA.
Yeah, thanks for that. Eric, it seems it's a bit of a challenge to communicate with pilots in this shifting environment and where there's moving targets and things are changing pretty consistently. It's very dynamic. What can you say about that in terms of communicating with pilots? And they're hungry for some clarity and to know what's going on with the company and specifically with contract violations and pay accuracy and those types of things.
Yeah, you've seen our comms up to this point have all described problems. And that's relatively easy for us to put things out and inform all the Delta pilots what the problems are. What's been challenging is when we are formulating our plans, and I promise you there is a plan in the works as we are making this podcast, the landscape changes. So there's some strategy involved. We don't necessarily want to telegraph to our counterparts exactly where our head is on certain items. And frankly, when the facts change weekly, we have to be responsive to that with what our plans are as well. So we do have plans. You will hear about them. I ask a little bit of patience as we progress down a road that's pretty foreign to Delta pilots and hold our counterparts accountable for the agreement that they made.
Yeah, that's understandable. You don't want to broadcast your whole strategy or your war plan, so to speak. It's almost like, how many troops do you have, and may I count them, please?
Yeah, so if you haven't already, please go back and look at our MEC alerts over the course of the last 6 months. They do lay out the cases that we are making, and they point to a lot of our ongoing issues. So if you haven't done it, please do that, because I think it'll be very informing on the current state of affairs and the things we are working on. Another piece I'd like to just mention as well is you all have your own individual reps in your councils, and we've seen a number of councils put out their monthly communications. Really, all of them since our last MEC meeting have put out a comm. They are all singing the same tune right now. They're all sending the same message. Our councils are as unified as I have ever seen. So you're asking about communications. There's been a lot of communications in a educational type posture. Hey, this is what's going on. I completely understand. Every week it seems like there's something new that somewhat changes the landscape. And to escalate this into, at the end of the day, compel Delta to just do the right thing. That's all we're asking.
So it's not for a lack of communication or transparency. It's more of a being nimble with those communications. So we're stepping up our game in the Engage podcast and doing, these chairman's updates where we can be efficient and nimble. If you listen to the weekly engagements, the weekly updates, those will be hugely important and adapt to the timeline. So definitely stay engaged there. And, you talk about pilot unity, and it seems like the union always says that, right? Now is the time for pilot unity. And there's really never not a time. Right?
Hey, it's summertime. Everybody's kids are out of school.
People are on vacation.
Vacation.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine.
What's your call to action from the company?
Follow the agreement that you signed. There are requirements under the Railway Labor Act that we both act in good faith when we sign agreements. And we know what we meant. I was in the last negotiation for almost 4 years, and I know what we negotiated. I know what we meant, and frankly, so do they. We follow this contract that we all agreed on, and you have a team of people in place right now in our office who all understand our contract. Brandon Conwell is my vice chairman. He was on the negotiating committee with me the entire time. Rich Wheeler is one of my executive administrators. He was on the negotiating committee at that time. We have our entire scheduling team was engaged in that negotiation. We have a deep well of experience over here who all understand how this contract was designed, why it was written the way that it is, what the terms are. This entire team understands how this thing's supposed to work. And I really don't think that our counterparts across the street fully appreciate that we understand how it works, and we are willing to, using every tool we have, that they follow what was agreed to.
Well said. And so the same question of what's your call to action for the pilot group? What do you need in response?
Just be engaged, be informed, show your unity. During contract negotiations, everybody took their hats off, and that was a great show of unity. Right now, I think just something simple like wearing your ALPA pin. You've heard us mention it a few times. It's been in a comm or two. All your reps are getting pins that they can hand out when they see in the lounge. Throw it on your tie, throw it on your lapel, wherever you feel comfortable wearing it. But that just shows that, hey, I'm part of this group. It matters to me, the outcome. These guys and gals are fighting for me, and I support them. And this is how I show it. There's fleet pins that came out too. Those become pretty popular. But just show your support for ALPA just by wearing something simple. That does not take much effort. And again, being educated, informed, engage your reps, understand the issues, talk to your fellow pilots, obviously in a respectful way in the cockpits and on layovers. And I just heard scheduling did this to you, man. That's not right. Did you know that's in violation what they just did? Those sorts of conversations are actually really powerful. And when we're all thinking that way, I do think that it makes ALPA's job certainly easier if the pilot group is unified and educated.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And those pins are noticed. Wear your ALPA pin on your lanyard on your 100-year anniversary tie that pilots seemingly like.
There's actually some interesting little things that I think most people don't realize about those pins, but there's some with stars on them. Star means that pilot has engaged in a strike. The color of the pin matters. If it's a silver pin, it means that pilot has been an elected representative within the union. Obviously, there's ones with the number of years of service you've had, but there's a history to that. We actually have a comm that's going to come out to the pilot group just to level set everyone and make you understand, hey, this is what this pin means, and this is why it's important. This is why it's a special thing, and something that we should wear proudly.
Awesome. Eric Criswell, MEC Chairman, thank you so much. Thanks for the update. It sounds like you've got your hands full, your plate full. We certainly appreciate it, and we'll be talking to you more and more as we go.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, we're here every day, and we're going to make sure that we give it every ounce of our energy will go to defending this contract, defending these pilots, and getting ourselves put in a better footing than we are right now.
Thanks very much.
You're listening to Engage, the podcast for Delta pilots. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or your favorite podcast platform, and receive notifications when a new episode is available.